Section 3 is going to tell you the effect of the stress hormones on the mind. Remember, your brain perceives something as stress. When that occurs, brain areas get activated, which cause an elevation in the concentration of certain hormones. These hormones do have an effect on the mind, and let's talk about those. Depression. You've noted when you've been under stress for a while that you get the blues, you get depressed. And generally, what you will say is, if you had to deal with the stuff I'm dealing with, you'd be depressed too. Well, it's true. Part of the reason you have depression, you get the blues when you've been under stress, is because you're dealing with stress. But there's a more important reason, and that is that one of the stress hormones causes damage to cells in the brain. It damages cells in the area of the brain involved with depression, so that the number of brain cells you have in the area of the brain that regulates depression is reduced. And when that happens, there is nothing that you can do about it. You are going to be depressed. Now, if you get the concentration of the hormone down, the brain cells come back. It's not like many people were taught that when you're born you have a certain number of brain cells, and as you go through life, that's all that you have. The reality is that we generate new brain cells as we go through life. So get the concentration of the hormone down, the brain cells come back, and the depression will lessen or go away. If you know anybody who's ever had to take antidepressant medication, you know that it takes 4, 5, 6 weeks before it works. And that's because the medication works through promoting regeneration of the brain cells, and that takes a little bit of time to do. So if we can keep our stress hormones down, the risk of depression decreases. We'll find more joy in life. We'll be happier. Memory. Memory is an issue. The brain cells that are involved with memory are also affected by the cells, by the hormones that cause stress. And generally what happens, there is a decrease in the number of these brain cells. And when this occurs, you will have memory difficulties at a younger age than you otherwise would have. This is not Alzheimer's disease. It's not multi-infarct dementia. It simply is another mechanism that causes you to have memory difficulties as you continue to age. So let's keep the stress hormones down, better memory, less risk of depression, management of depression better, feeling better. A third thing that happens in the brain, and you've experienced this, somebody said something to you that upset you, or somebody maybe cut you off while driving. Have you ever said anything or made a funny gesture, and then you say to yourself, golly, why did I do that? It's not me. I'm sorry I said that, or I'm sorry I did that. Well, the reason is that as soon as your brain perceived whatever it was as stress, a hormone went up that causes you to lose the ability to focus and think clearly. And that is why you will do or say something that may be inappropriate. It's not you. Now, I'm going to tell you something very important here, that if someone has a lot of stress early in life, and what I'm talking about is being abused, being physically abused, mentally abused, sexually abused. Such individuals become what we'll call hyper-responders, or they respond more rapidly to stress, so that the hormone goes up more quickly. And when an individual who has suffered a lot of stress early in life experiences stress later in life, the elevation of the hormone may cause them to lose control and the possibility of the individual engaging in a rage reaction occurs. So a point is that when you are interacting with somebody who's having difficulty controlling themselves or acting a little bit strange, you may think they're acting strange or a little bit weird, you've got to start thinking about uh, what happened to this person. What could have taken place when they were younger that is causing them to behave in the way they are. So, stress has an effect on the mind, on the brain. It will cause you to have the blues, depression. It will give you memory problems. And it will interfere with your focusing and thinking clearly. This is a picture that makes a point. This is a study actually of rats, but the same data applies to humans. So let me explain it to you. On the left, there is a single brain cell. This is the body of the brain cell, and all of these projections coming off of the body are the ways the brain cell connects to other brain cells. And the more connections a single brain cell makes to other brain cells, the greater efficiency of that cell will be to do whatever it's supposed to do. So this cell came from a normal rat, a happy rat. Over on the right side, here is the body of the cell body of the brain cell. But this is from a rat that had been under stress. And notice the number of connections coming from the main body that can go to other cells is distinctly less than those connections from a rat that was not under stress. And as I said to you just on the prior slide dealing with memory, when we've had a lot of stress, we do develop memory problems at younger ages than we otherwise would have. And you can think about that in regard to these pictures. Lots of connections versus fewer connections associated with stress. A final thing that I want to tell you about in regard to the brain has to do with pain and the perception of pain. Now, what do I mean by perception? I'm sure you've experienced times when you have said to somebody, you have pain, something is bothering you, and that the person has said, I got the same problem, but it doesn't bother me. Or the opposite, you've said to somebody, I've got this thing bothering me, but it doesn't cause me much pain. And they say, well, I've got the same problem and I've got a lot of pain. Well, the issue is perception. The stress hormone, norepinephrine, increases the perception of pain, so that when we are exposed to something that causes pain and our stress hormones are high, we feel aches and pain more. They hurt more. When stress hormone concentrations are low, pain will hurt less. So if we can do things to keep the concentration of stress hormones low, we will experience less pain. The pain will still be there. It's not going to be that we need to pay attention to something because it's real. We're not going to feel it. You are going to feel it, but it won't be as intense. Now, here's an example. How about the discomfort of delivering a baby? Deep breathing is a way we can put more oxygen into our blood, and I'm going to talk about this shortly. And putting more oxygen into our blood lowers the concentration of stress hormones. And this is an important component of the Lamaze program that pregnant women engage in preparation for delivery of a child. The goal here is to decrease the concentration of the stress hormone norepinephrine, which when it's elevated increases the perception of pain. Less norepinephrine, it hurts less. An interesting study related to this was people who had arthritis, and they selected people who on x-ray had the same amount of arthritis. And they said to them, how bad is your arthritis and how much pain medication do you take? And some of the people said, oh, it hurts me a lot. I need a lot of pain medication. And other people said, not so bad. Doesn't really bother me. I'm aware of it and I don't need much pain medication. But yet they had the same amount of arthritis. And when studies were done looking at the difference between these people, it was found that the people who perceived less pain and took less pain medication were lower in the amount of stress they perceived in their lives and higher in the amount of optimism they had. They had low stress and high optimism. The people who perceived a lot of pain were high in stress and low in optimism. And we'll see later on how these psychosocial factors can affect our perception of pain. That completes section 3, the effect of stress on the mind. Now let's learn about how stress can affect the health of the body.